Welcome to the Design Materials channel. I am Edson Mafuz, architect and professor of design at the School of Architecture, Federal University of Rio Grande do Sul in Porto Alegre, Brazil. The theme of this video is the Niclewicz house, a true architectural treasure hidden in Curitiba, capital of the southern state of Paraná. It is reassuring to be able to find such a serene and receptive work at a time when almost everything is appearance without substance, and when a mistaken idea of creativity predominates, resulting in extravagant objects, visually striking but culturally irrelevant. Designed by Vilanova Artigas in 1978 for her niece, it was acquired in 2003 by Curitiba architect Marcos Bertoldi, who carried out a series of renovations which, far from disfiguring the original project, ended up further qualifying it. The Niclewicz house belongs to the brutalist universe. But as this definition is too comprehensive, one can add to it some recurring characteristics it shares with São Paulo architecture of the period in question. The role of spatial definer of the resistant structure, the tendency to a certain introversion, and the use of large windowless end walls, in addition to the use of exposed reinforced concrete. The house is located in the Seminario neighborhood, a few minutes from important areas of the city in a predominantly residential street. The site is 22 meters wide by 35 meters deep, and its level is much higher than that of the street. It is well known that a good project can and should in general be described in a few words. Thus, we can describe the Niclewicz house in two ways, equally brief. Either we see it as an L-shaped plan that embraces a courtyard, or as a rectangular plan in which 3/8 of its projection are dedicated to this courtyard. In any case, the plan consists of 8 modules measuring 8 by 6 meters, the total measure of the house being 25 by 17.5 meters. 15 pillars of 50 by 25 centimeters are placed on this initial grid, which, with the beams that join them and the two gables on the smaller sides of the rectangular planes in exposed concrete, define not only the resistance structure but also the formal structure of the house. This primordial role of the resistance structure is a distinctive aspect of the architecture of the so-called Paulista school, whose main exponents were Artigas himself and Paulo Mendes da Rocha, and part of the production of the Carioca school, especially the work of Afonso Reide. This clear and consequent planimetric organization served as the basis for resolving the implantation of the house on the steep terrain. A vertical cut in the terrain coincides with half of the rectangle, defining an access and parking sector at street level, originally open to the street but later closed by a metal gate, and a higher one that defines the private courtyard. Positioned more or less centrally on the ground, there are 4.4 setbacks at the back of the site, 2.5 centimeters at the sides, and 4.7 at the front. The circulation scheme of the Niclewicz house is an aspect that deserves some attention. The ramp has become almost a signature in the architecture of Artigas. It appeared for the first time in 1949 at the Shapsky House and evolved by means of several other domestic projects, reaching its full development here in what was Artigas's last residential project. Nowhere else the ramp integrates more naturally with the spatial organization, connecting perfectly with the living room, the intimate living area, the den, and the upper corridor. Here we see the vertical circulation, which is the ramp, and the horizontal circulation, the corridor that serves the bedrooms. The house program is spread over 4 levels. At street level, there is the access and the parking. Then comes the original level of the site, where the social area and the courtyard are. Half a story up there is a den, and another half a story up one comes to the bedroom floor. If the figure of the courtyard appears in the two initial descriptions, it is because this exterior space is the visual focus of this house. A large exterior room defined three-dimensionally by the L-shaped volume that houses the interior space, by the rear gable, by three exempt pillars, and by beams that form a kind of giant pergola. In this way, we are aware of all parts of the house: the living room, the ramp, the circulation of the bedrooms, and the private room. At the access level, we have the parking area, the main and service access, and several spaces originally for service, today transformed into the office of the architect Bertoldi, who enlarged them without this being easily perceived, as he intelligently used the space defined by the retaining walls in front of the terrain. More on that at the end of this video. And we have the access to the studio, access to the garden, and access to the house. Just after entering, there is a meeting room that serves the studio, a restroom, and the ramp. On the second level are the courtyard, the living dining room, the kitchen pantry, and other service spaces. A staircase parallel to the south gable connects the service sector to the intimate sector of the house. Upstairs are the 5 bedrooms. Half a level below, in the shortest leg of the L, is the den, from where you have an elevated view of the patio or courtyard. With the exception of the den wing, the entire program was accommodated in the east half of the rectangle, occupying 4 modules. Here is the roof plan, in which we can see this diagonal beam appearing, and it's a curious thing because it's the only diagonal in the whole project. We might think this is an odd thing, something which is not well related to Artigas' architecture, but then when we reach this point in the description, we'll see the role that this diagonal uh, wall plays, and this role is very important. Seen from the outside, the most evident elements of the house are the retaining wall made of granite blocks, located on the alignment of the site to the right in the picture, and a rectangular elevated and slightly recessed plane, the southern gable of the house. The solution endows the domestic spaces with absolute privacy and contrasts vividly with the openness experienced from the inside. You enter the site through a covered space defined by the projection of the den, a dark gray Portuguese stone floor, and a very pleasant vegetable frame. From there, you can enter the studio or advance to access the residential area. It is also possible to glimpse something of the spatial relationships that take place on the upper level and inside the house. Having reached the end of the access plateau, the house offered the visitor two access routes, one inside by the ramps, the other outside by the stone staircase, arriving in the immense open air hall which is the pergola. Two very different and equally rewarding experiences. It is difficult to determine which is more interesting. Going up the staircase, looking back to the entrance, a little further up, looking back to the main entrance to the house, and we can see the ramp from here. Entering the house through the courtyard starts with climbing a stairway entirely made of stone. The steps are formed by two or three massive blocks alternately, and taking a 180 turn places under the large space defined by the pergola, an exterior with some interior characteristics. The courtyard is the focal point of the house. What could be easily a residual space has the characteristics of a double height hall due to the presence of a few pillars, the beam that joins them, the rear gable, and the upper beams that cover the empty part of the rectangular plan, reinforcing the feeling of being in a diaphanous interior surrounded by vegetation. Here, one is located at the back of the house, looking at the back gable, which is absolutely alike the front one. One thing to be noted is the water tank, the reservoir, which is another Artigas, an Artigas signature, because he, in most of his projects, put this kind of vertical box, which is supported by one of the columns uh, that is extended upwards to receive the box. And in general, they are painted in very vivid colors. The living dining room is a magnificent space in which we find ourselves between gardens. On one side, the small gardens that is the lateral setback, and on the other, the courtyard just mentioned. The low ceiling height of the room directs our gaze to these pleasant exteriors. The interior access route starts from a low space and in relative darkness, where there is an area for meetings and a restroom. From there, it ascends by a ramp with a black rubberized floor, and the space becomes progressively more illuminated. The first stop on the ramp takes us to the living room and service area. Halfway between the living room and the bedrooms, at the point where the ramp turns back on itself, there is a smaller living room that is the coziest place in the house, with a generous view of the courtyard and the pool, but sufficiently defined by walls to allow a feeling of withdrawal, which contrasts positively with the visual expansion of the main room. Here we see why that wall is at an angle, because it opens up the view to the courtyard from the landing, from the point where we either go to the bedrooms or go to the den. The ramp culminates in a corridor that, uniquely in Artigas's work, seems to be part of the outside instead of simply being the means of access to the bedrooms. On this floor are the 5 bedrooms. This is the part of the house that has been most renovated. The 2 bathrooms that serve the secondary dormitories had their layouts maintained, but have been completely renovated. The master bedroom was the most altered, and for the better. This is the master bedroom, the first part of the master bathroom, and the second part where the showers and the toilets are. Here is one of the secondary bedrooms. They are the same. And here, the bathroom that serves one of them or 2 of them, completely renovated. The transformation of the service spaces on the ground floor into the architect's office also had the effect of qualifying a part of the house, originally secondary, with special emphasis on the workroom, defined by the granite walls that previously functioned as a retaining wall, where an intelligent solution allows light and air to enter the working space. On the right, the entrance to the studio, a stairway by the entrance that takes one to the original level of the site, a secondary stair. And here we have the situation before the renovation of the space. We see here where the studio is, and the green rectangle on top of it is from where light and air enters the room and creates this kind of space. Very small space, but which is qualified by the entrance of light at the very end. A very clever solution to this problem. Also to note is the side of the interior side of the rocks, the granite wall on the right, which before was a retaining wall, so there was no reason to be careful about the irregularity of the granite blocks, which was taking care in the exterior. But then it became very interesting for the architect's studio. Here, how the opening is covered and protected on top of that granite box, and a number of details of the house. One of the interesting ones uh, is shown in the 2 pictures on the left, where we see the column and the front wall separated but by a red strip, kind of recessed red strip. It's a house that could seem a kind of rustic work, but it's full of very, very subtle details. The current house can be considered a joint work between Vilanova Artigas and Marcos Bertoldi, because the current owner, unlike many cases of intervention in buildings classified as heritage, further qualified the house by renovating the toilet, the bathrooms, and the dormitories. Here and there we find new elements that serve to enhance the quality of the existing building, such as the metal gate that closes the house to the street, the replacement of the original floor by black rubber, and the red glass door that limits access to the dormitories. The Niclewicz house, both in its original design and in its current state, provides a definitive example that high quality in architecture does not depend on luxurious materials or bizarre shapes. A correct combination of space, color, vegetation, and natural materials can take us very far. I thank you very much for watching one more video, and I hope you come back for more.